Hey everyone, this is Teresa from Base 10 Montessori, and today I'm going to present you with Chapter 4 from the Absorbent Mind. And this chapter is titled The New Path. Now, Chapter 4 is a pretty short chapter, and I think if you're a parent, you're going to like this chapter, not just because it's short and you can get through it, but because it's really a beautiful chapter. And I think it says a lot about the love of the parent for the child. And I think, it really does present this beautiful, beautiful picture, not just of the child, but of the parent. And um, I think that that is something that sometimes gets overlooked, but she definitely writes about that. It just sometimes gets lost when we're trying to talk a lot about what the teacher's role is. So, this is your chapter, parents. This is the one I want you to read. It's short and it's beautiful and it gives a lot of inspiration to the parent. So if you haven't read this, I really encourage you to at least read this chapter if you have this chapter available to you. And after chapter 4 comes chapter 5, of course, because we're going in order. And I'm going to warn you right now, chapter 5 is going to be difficult for me. It has a lot of biology in it, and I'm not going to lie. Biology is not my favorite topic. It's not something I really did very well with in school. And I'm going to have to work at that chapter to figure out how to present it to you. And I think that chapter would be easier if I made it a little more visual instead of just reading through it, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm a little stumped with chapter 5 and how to present that one. If biology is your strong point, chapter 5 may work really well for you. For me, I always kind of skipped that chapter. And I thought, okay, I'll just glance at it, but really, I'm just going to skip over it. So, chapter 5, it might take me a while to put out. We'll see how well I do with it. It might be a struggle for me. But anyways, that's chapter 5. Let's go back to focusing on chapter 4 and let's go to the first set of quotes. Now, before I start, I don't have a lot of comments on this chapter. I really just have a lot of quotes that I thought were very interesting and beautiful, but I don't have a lot to say of my own thoughts for this. So I might read through just a lot of this and we'll keep it nice and short today. So my chapter for chapter 4 starts on page 25 in my book. And Maria Montessori starts out by saying, at one time, all research was confined to adults. When scientists studied animals or plants, the specimens they took were always adult specimens. One of the topics most often discussed was death. But this need not surprise us, since the adult, on his way through life, is going towards his death. But science is now beginning to take just the opposite direction. The focus of interest is on the younger specimens, and even on their origins. Embryology and cytology, the study of cell life, have come to the fore, and from investigations made at this lowly level, something like a new philosophy is springing up. Let us start with one very simple reflection. The child, unlike the adult, is not on his way to death. He is on his way to life. So the whole life of the child is an advance toward perfection, toward a greater completeness. From this, we may infer that the child will enjoy doing the work needed to complete himself. And I'm going to stop right there and just do a little bit of a comment. So when we talk about the work of the child in Montessori, this is what we're talking about. The work that the child needs to complete himself, to become an adult, because that is the child's work. And the child is very much on the path to life. And so when we're talking about a child's work or what the child does, even though we talk very much about the child getting to do some of the same works as an adult, right? But in their own variation of it, like sweeping the floor, they're not going to use the adult-sized broom, and they may not have the responsibilities that adult has in sweeping the floor, but we still offer that work. So that work has a lot of purpose in it. It has, not only does it develop the muscles, it develops the body, it starts connecting the mind with the body. It creates virtue and character inside of the child and inner discipline inside of the child, and also gives the child a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of contribution to the community. So a lot of that comes back to what we say in Montessori is the child's work. And just to go back a little bit further to the study of adults in science, I don't have a lot to say there other than it's really interesting to know that science really was limited to adults at her time, and it really hasn't been that long since we really started studying children, since we started studying the beginning of life. It sounds like this is still a fairly new concept, and if this is something that you've studied, or if this is a subject that you have a particular forte in, I would love to hear from you. So leave a comment down in the bottom if this is something, if you're a biology person, again, and if you've really studied a lot of this type of scientific evidence. Maybe you know the history of the scientific process in regards to studying adults and children. So if you have that knowledge, feel free to leave a comment below so that we can all learn just a little bit more of what she's talking about at the beginning of the chapter. And let's see, page 26 in my book, she says, again, there is no competition in childhood because no one can do for the child the work he has to do to build the man he is making. No one, in short, can do his growing for him. And I love this quote. And I constantly have gone back to this quote this week, and I've thought about it a lot. And there's so many things I want to say, but I haven't fully processed it. So I think I might come back to this quote in another video when I've had time to process it more, because I have a lot of thoughts on this. And I don't know if you find that thought interesting. If you do, leave a comment. But it is a very interesting idea. We do know that nobody can do the growing and the developing for a child. But when we really think about that in terms of what we're doing in society today and how we're trying to help children all across the United States, all across the world, is there an expectation that somebody or something can help do the growing for the child? I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's more of a philosophical question, right? So where do you see that quote fitting in with modern society today? Do we have people trying to do the growing for the child? You know, what do you think the motivation for her to say this was? What was she seeing at the time? And I think the point that she is making is that we really have to provide the child with the opportunities so that he can do the growing that he needs. Because without the environment, without the resources, without all of the things that they need to develop themselves, you know, the child, nobody can do it for the child. We can't make up for it later. So anyways, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that quote. She goes on to say, the love we find in infancy shows what kind of love should reign ideally in the grown-up world. A love able of its own nature to inspire sacrifice, the dedication of one ego to another ego, of oneself to the service of others. In the depth of their love, all parents renounce their own lives to dedicate them to their children. And this devotion is natural to them. It gives them joy and does not feel sacrificial. And I think that's a really powerful quote. If you're a parent out there and you're feeling the sacrifice right now, I understand. Like, I get it. Children are not the easiest creatures in the world to raise, right? But you've taken on that, and I think most parents understand, you know, at the extent of themselves, you know, they find this joy when they've given everything of themselves, and it's the end of the day, and you're just looking for 5 minutes for yourself, and you're starting to feel that strain. At the same time, there's that devotion, right? There's that joy that comes from it, even though you're extremely tired or you're extremely hungry or you're just one extreme after another. And that sacrifice that you're making, you know, at the same time, it's something you wouldn't be able to feel if you didn't have children, right? That extreme that you can go to. It's really interesting. And I love that she describes it like this, that sacrifice and the devotion, and it feels natural. It feels natural to sacrifice yourself for your child. So it's just a really beautiful wording out there. So if you're a parent and this really speaks to you, leave a comment down below and let me know how that idea impacts you as a parent, because I think it's really beautiful. And then I'm going to go to the next slide, and this is actually our last slide for the chapter. Like I said, it was a very short chapter. So on page 27, she says, what businessman in a position to acquire some property he needs will ever say to one of his competitors, "You can have it, I am leaving it for you"? But if hungry parents are short of food, they will deny themselves the last crumb of bread rather than have the child go hungry. And I understand this quote right here actually may hit home for a lot of parents who are struggling with right now, especially with the shortage of formula, and some of you are really dealing with this on a level you probably never expected. So, you know, if you're going through that trial, if you're feeling that pressure right now, let me know, let others know how this quote has impacted you, how you're feeling about it, what you're going through right now, and maybe something uplifting. Again, bringing it back to, you know, the sacrifice that you make for your child is really an important thing to notice and acknowledge about each other, and also give encouragement and hopefully resources to help one another, right? And finally, the last quote that I really enjoyed about this chapter, she says, if survival depended solely on the triumph of the strong, then the species would perish. So the real reason for survival, the principal factor in the struggle for existence, is the love of adults for their young. And I just find that a very powerful way to kind of close out my thoughts on this chapter. Again, she's kind of referring back to the idea of survival of the fittest from the Darwin thought. And again, if you're somebody who's studied a lot of science, a lot of biology, a lot of Darwin, I'd be interested to see what your response to this quote would be. But also, you know, just a parent perspective of this quote, you know, that survival of the fittest is really the protection of the weakest in this regard, right? So it's a little different than maybe Darwin explained it, or maybe somebody with a Darwinian type of a philosophy might explain it, right? And so that the love of adults for their young is the real reason for survival. And I think that's a beautiful way to end this video, very short video. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this short little video on chapter 4. Again, it's a beautiful chapter, very short. So go ahead and get the book, read this chapter. And always, as always, let me know how you feel about any of the quotes, any of the ideas. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. And if you like what I'm doing here, comment, share, subscribe, like, all that good stuff will help me out and help me grow the channel. So if you could do those few things for me, I would appreciate it. And in the meantime, I will be busy studying chapter 5 so I can figure out how to present that in a way that makes sense to you and hopefully me too. So anyways, I'm going to go work on chapter 5. So I hope you have a great, wonderful, beautiful day.